So the Pilgrims had spent 2 months on the Mayflower before they arrived in Plymouth. Now, part of the problem was that they were destined to go to Virginia, but the wind had blown them off course further north. They tried to go down to Virginia, but they couldn't because of the paths of the sea and the winds were blowing against them, and it was too dangerous. So they finally landed in Plymouth. The Pilgrims arrived in Massachusetts. That's where Plymouth is, in Massachusetts Bay, in November of 1620. Now, if you're from Massachusetts, you probably know it's cold, and that's what the Pilgrims had to deal with. They didn't have any houses. They didn't have any friends to welcome them. They didn't even know where exactly they were. Now, you would think they arrived, then you get off the boat. But they had no houses, no place to live, and it's freezing cold. They're still on a boat with 100 people, crowded with all of their belongings. So what they had to do was build houses and find food. So while the men and hardworking, abled people were building houses, there were other people exploring the land and finding out exactly where they could grow some food, because they did bring some seeds from Europe. In their exploration, they found mounds of dirt in this location. And those mounds of dirt were left by the Indians. You see, this particular part of Massachusetts, where they were in Plymouth, had been occupied by Indians, but there was a previous sickness or plague in that region that killed off all of that Indian group. And so it was abandoned, and there were no other Indians in that location. So the Pilgrims thought, by the providence of God, that they had found the right place to plant some seeds. While they were planting their seeds, they found corn. Those mounds were actually corn that had been left by the Indians. So they took that corn and they again thanked God for his provision. But remember, it's still the cold of winter, and it takes a long time to grow food. So the Pilgrims had to wait a long time, and it was especially hard because the winter was getting colder. And the saddest part of this story is, out of 100 pilgrims, 50 of them died that very first winter in the first few months. Now, can you imagine what it's like? You bring your family, you bring your children. Some of them didn't bring their children. Some of them just came to see what would come of the place. But then they died and they lose life. It was a very sad winter for the Pilgrims. Regardless of how difficult it was for the Pilgrims to endure that first winter, the character that they showed during this time was incredible. They worked tirelessly to take care of one another and to bury the dead in the cold of winter, without housing and without enough food. So I think the lesson here with the Pilgrims in this stage of their journey is the perseverance and faith that they had in God. This is one of the most amazing things about the Pilgrim story.